Hey, what's going on, guys? It's History Obscured, and today I'm going to be touching on the former American president, Abraham Lincoln. All right. Now, one of the main reasons why I decided to choose this topic and to speak on Abraham Lincoln is because of the fact that he is widely known for establishing the Emancipation Proclamation. All right. And the whole purpose of why they say it was put in place was for the purpose of freeing black slaves from captivity, mainly under the southern states. Okay, because when you look at the North and the South, there were different objectives that they followed, and their objectives or their ideologies collided, especially when it came to their views on having black slaves. All right, well, I'm gonna get into all of this as we go through in the video, as we progress through the video. All right. Now, what we're going to say about Abraham Lincoln, all right, is he is praised, he's glorified as the man that was widely known for basically speaking against slavery and being an advocate of prohibiting slavery in the United States of America, especially in the southern states, from continuing. What a lot of people don't understand is that his true agenda as to why he spoke against slavery had nothing to do with the immoral acts that were taking place and him basically detesting it. Okay, it was nothing to do with that. Abraham Lincoln didn't have no care for black slaves in terms of him actually caring for their liberty. It was a military move and it was a political move combined. All right, so that's what I want you guys to understand. Okay, now in 1858, Abraham Lincoln was having a debate with another man who was basically fighting for the spot of presidency. Okay, and his name was Stephen A. Douglas. Now, Stephen A. Douglas, all right, he already knew that Abraham Lincoln was basically trying to push the prohibition of slavery, and he used that to his advantage in order to gain more votes in order to become president at that time. So he used that against Abraham Lincoln. Now, a lot of people don't understand or may not be familiar with this history, okay, because when Stephen A. Douglas brought out the point of Abraham Lincoln defending black slaves in regards to them being in captivity, Abraham Lincoln made it clear that he was not in support, or he did not believe that blacks could ever be equal to the white race. All right, so he clarified a lot of things. All right, and I quote, all right, this is what he said openly during that debate. So he said, "I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races." A lot of people do not know this history concerning Abraham Lincoln. Okay, again, because the history has been tainted. All right, Abraham Lincoln did not care about black slaves. Okay, but he made the decision to go ahead with pushing the prohibition of slavery in order to protect the Union. This is what we're going to get into. All right. He also said that he was not in favor of black voting, black serving in juries, so anything to do with any political decisions or anything in regards to the Constitution. Blacks had no say in that. Neither did he believe in interracial marriage. Okay, so when you examine this, if you put two and two together, you will realize that Abraham Lincoln still looked at blacks as a inferior race, or better yet, a servile race. Okay, now his position early on was not immediate nationwide equality. All right, in fact, it was never about equality. All right, it was that slavery should not spread westward into new territories. Okay, he believed containing slavery would eventually weaken it, and what it means by weaken it is weaken the union between the northern states and the southern states. All right, and that's what put him against the southern slaveholding states, who saw slavery as essential to their economy and political power. All right. So that's what it was all about. It was about maintaining a strong union, but more so creating their own democracy that he wanted the southern states to adhere to. They would not adhere to that if they believed, or if they focused on still obtaining their black slaves, because the North, which Abraham Lincoln was a part of, they didn't want that to happen. Okay, he wanted to have more control and have more say in regards to any political decisions in regards to the Union, and the only thing that would stop that is the southern states still having the possession of black slaves, because it was working well for them. The southern states were thriving based on black labor, and they didn't want to change that. So Abraham Lincoln knew that if they continued with the mindset of obtaining black slaves and using them as a possession to fuel their economy, there will be no need for the northern states or the north, should I say, to basically have any form of control or say, because they wouldn't need the North for any reason. All right, Abraham Lincoln didn't want that. He wanted the southern states to follow his political decisions and policies and laws within the North's constitution in order to maintain power. That's what it was all about. It had nothing to do with freeing the black slaves. Okay, that's one thing that I want you to take into consideration. All right, now going back to the debate between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen A. Douglas. Again, the debate was based on who was going to win the seat or in being America's new president at that time. All right, and in 1860, Abraham Lincoln won the most votes, and he became America's new president. All right, now this caused a big stir, all right, within the between the North and the South, because many Southern leaders feared that slavery's future was threatened under Abraham Lincoln's rule being president. All right, because they already knew that, okay, he's already spoken against the Southern states having possession of their slaves. Okay, so in their mind, they're like, okay, now that Abraham Lincoln's in power, we have to now strategize to figure out a way on how we can maintain our slaves without him intervening and making any changes within the policy of slavery. Because they knew that if Abraham Lincoln came in and made those changes regarding slavery and the prohibition of slavery, the Southern states will no longer be able to practice slavery in terms of them having black slaves to work their plantations and to build their economy. All right, and this actually leads to what caused the Civil War, all right, between the North and the South. Okay, so again, several states seceded and they formed their own confederacy, beginning the American Civil War. All right, so they weren't with being part of a coalition of states under the administration of the North, which was run by Abraham Lincoln. All right, now at the beginning of the war, Lincoln's main public goal was preserving the Union, as I mentioned before, not freeing enslaved people. All right, the only reason why he wanted the prohibition of slavery to be put in place was to maintain the Union, which was really controlling the political decisions amongst the North and the Southern states. It was a power struggle. That's what it was all about. Okay, now in 1862, he famously wrote that, and I want you to listen very carefully, because this is a common quote, all right, that you can find in many different sources. So it says, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it." This came out of Abraham Lincoln's mouth, showing you that he did not care about black slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation was a lie. It had nothing to do with the care or welfare of blacks. It was a power move, a military and political move to preserve the Union between the North and the South. All right. Now, by 1862, the Union needed a stronger strategy, right? So the North had major advantages. Why? Because they had more factories, they had more railroads, they had more of a population, and they had great financial power. So that's what kind of gave the North an edge, all right? Now, moving on with the Emancipation Proclamation, all right? I want you to listen very closely to this. On January the 1st, 1863, that was when the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, all right? That's when it became a declaration to let mainly the slavehold states in the South, to let them know that your slaves, you have to free them under this declaration that has been established and put in as a part of law to stop slavery from continuing, okay? And again, like I said, it was done so he could maintain power and control over the political decisions that the South would make, all right? But I want you to listen to this very carefully. The Emancipation Proclamation, because what has been pushed and taught is that the Emancipation Proclamation freed all black slaves under, especially those that were under slavery within the southern region states, okay? But that was not the case. It did not free every black person in America, and that's what is not being taught, all right? It declared enslaved people free only in Confederate-controlled states still in rebellion. That was it. So many again, I'll give you an example for this, right? It did not free enslaved people in Union border states like Kentucky or Maryland, right? Kentucky and Maryland did not rebel against the Union, so guess what? They were still able to possess black slaves. People do not know this information, all right? It was only based on the slave states that rebelled against the Union. They were the only states that would fit the law in regards to the prohibition of having black slaves, all right? The reason why is because they didn't want to listen to the policy that was being put in place by Abraham Lincoln. Why? Because they didn't feel they needed it, because they were looking at it in a way where we are independent. We've been, our economy has been thriving ever since we've had these black slaves to push our economy. Why would we need the North to dictate and tell us what to do in regards to the benefits of our own economy? And that is what Abraham Lincoln had a problem with, all right? Now, it weakened the Confederate labor system by encouraging enslaved people to flee plantations and support Union forces, all right? So again, it was a military strategy because many of the blacks that were in slaveholding states that were rebelling against the Union fled to the North to join the armies in the North that basically comprised of their army fighting against the South, all right? So many of the black slaves in the South were basically used as a tool to take down the slaveholding states that rebelled against the Union, okay? Now, it allowed black men to join the Union Army, and nearly 180,000, all right? Nearly up to 180,000 eventually served. And it also made the war internationally about slavery, which again was a strategy and a tactic that Abraham Lincoln used to weaken southern states, all right? And the big thing about this is because Abraham Lincoln made it, or publicly made it, about stopping and prohibiting slavery, countries such as Britain and France, right, were discouraged from siding with the Confederacy, all right, because they didn't want to be part of the guilt or being looked down upon because of the fact that they were supporting the South to fight against the North, because they didn't want to look like they were in support of slavery. Okay, so Abraham Lincoln used that strategy to basically stop the southern states that were in rebellion to the Union from getting assistance from external countries like Britain and France. All right, now just going back to slavery again, I'm still touching on that. Abraham Lincoln did not initially seek to abolish slavery everywhere immediately, all right, but he strongly, listen to this, he strongly opposed the expansion and long-term power of slavery, especially in the South, All right, so going back to what I'm saying, it was the fear that with the success that the South was receiving from blacks applying slave labor within their economy, it would cause the South to eventually surpass the North, all right, when it came to political power, all right. And Abraham Lincoln did not want that to happen, because he knew that if the Southern states surpassed him or surpassed the North in power, his presidency would basically become redundant, all right. And that was his fear, because he feared that slavery spreading would give slaveholding states too much political power. He didn't want that, all right. And that was one of the biggest concerns before the Civil War started, okay. Southern slave states already had enormous influence in Congress and national politics as well, all right. So if slavery spread into Western territories, the South could gain more slave states, which would mean more senators, which would then mean more control over federal laws. That was the reason as to why Abraham Lincoln was in fear, okay? And he believed that slavery's expansion would strengthen that political system permanently, all right? So his mindset was to stop slavery from expanding from the West, contain it, and weaken it over time, all right? And again, this was for the purpose or the efforts of Abraham Lincoln wanting to preserve the Union, all right? Now, when the Southern states seceded after his election, Lincoln saw that as a direct threat to the United States, meaning that many Southern states refused to abide by what Abraham Lincoln was trying to put in place, okay, regarding the maintaining of the Union, all right? So he saw that as a direct threat to the United States, in the sense that he could not have political control over their policy regards to slavery or having black slaves, okay? Now, the main thing in his mindset, right, regarding the Union was to keep the country together, all right? So he believed that if the states could leave whenever they disagreed with an election, the Union would collapse, all right? So his mind was, I have to create a democratic atmosphere to make sure that the Southern states are in line, because if they leave the coalition that I'm trying to build, then that means that I lose power or control over the decisions they make from a political standpoint, all right? But slavery at the end of the day was the center of the secession, all right? Many Southern states wanted to keep their slaves for the purpose of the fact that it was helping their economy, and they could not see Abraham Lincoln telling them anything different from what they've already been doing, because of the fact that it was benefiting their economy massively, all right? Now, Southern leaders openly declared slavery as a core reason for leaving. Because of that, Lincoln increasingly saw defeat in the Confederacy and weakening slavery, as said before, all right? So when you look at the war, all right, prior to the Civil War starting, it was slavery that fueled the Southern War effort. The South was so adamant to keep their slaves that they were willing to go to war with the North in order to fight to keep their slaves, all right? So once the Civil War began, enslaved labor actually helped the Confederate economy, growing crops, building defenses, transporting supplies, all right? And Lincoln came to see slavery as helping the South continue fighting. Lincoln came to see slavery as helping the South continue fighting, all right? So that was the only stronghold that the Southern states had when it came to trying to fight against the North, all right? Now, going back to the Emancipation Proclamation, all right? Now you have a better understanding. It made the emancipation both a moral and military decision. But when I say moral, I wouldn't say sincerely, because like I mentioned before, Abraham Lincoln mentioned that if he could maintain slavery, he would do it. All right, so it had nothing to do with morality. Again, it was more militarily of an objective for Abraham Lincoln. Okay. Now, by the war years, Lincoln's thinking had become slavery is morally wrong, which I've already mentioned that, yeah, openly, he did that as a tactic, okay, to make him look like he was the good guy. But it was also that slavery gives the South dangerous political power, and that was the main thing that caused Abraham Lincoln to say, nope, you can't keep your slaves. I'm going to stop you from keeping your slaves because I need to maintain political power in order for the North to have more dominant more of a dominant power or force over all the rest of the southern states. So he basically wanted them to follow his regime. All right. So again, ending slavery would help save that union, and that's one of the main reasons why he opposed to the South continuing. All right. So basically, that is the summary of the Emancipation Proclamation tied in with the Civil War. Okay. But one of the main things that I want you to understand is that he was not campaigning for blacks to be freed. All right. Neither was he campaigning for racial equality. All right. He was adamant to stop the union, to preserve the union because of political influence. All right. Now, another thing that I want to speak on, all right, this is the last point I'm going to speak on, is regarding a meeting that Abraham Lincoln had with a delegation of black leaders who he invited to the White House and spoke bluntly about colonization. All right, so this is what I want you to understand, just to further prove the point that Abraham Lincoln did not care about the welfare of black slaves. All right, so this is what he told them. All right, he said that you and we are different races. Even when you cease to be slaves, you are yet far removed from being placed on an equality with the white race. Okay, so he did not believe in equality, and he was basically a white supremacist. Okay, then he said, listen carefully, it is better for us both, therefore, to be separated. He encouraged them to consider immigration, all right, to a colony in Central America, then being discussed in what is now Panama, all right, but not specifically Liberia, although he did make it known that it would be good for many of the freed black slaves to resettle in Liberia in order to rebuild themselves as a nation of people and to build a community. All right, and he got a lot of slack for that, and a lot of people do not actually know about this history. Okay, a lot of people do not know that Abraham Lincoln was trying to encourage freed black slaves after the Civil War was done, okay, or prior, I'm not too sure, don't count me on that, to go to Liberia, okay, and to rebuild their nation again, because in his mind that was equality. But he did not believe that white races and black races would ever be on the same level. That was his standpoint, and he stuck by it. Okay, so that's just to further add and to show you that he did not care about the Emancipation Proclamation that he publicly established as a declaration. Neither did he care about black slaves. He did not care, and as he mentioned before, if he could maintain the union by keeping black slaves, he would do it. All right. So the whole purpose of what I'm touching on this video was to show you that Abraham Lincoln did not care about freeing black slaves. He did not care about the welfare of black slaves. All he cared about was power and dominance and having influence over the North and the South in order to preserve the Union. All right. So that's it from me. I know that was a bit of a long one, but yeah, I wanted to do this video just to clear the air regarding that. Again, many people may have known about this history and some people may not. All right, but I'm just giving it to you how it is. All right, so that's it from me. It's History Obscured. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and push this content, because hey man, it's good stuff to learn. All right, I got more stuff coming. Make sure you lock in. But yeah, that's it from me. History Obscured. Peace, and peace.